with. In roughly 2011, we launched that program. It was market-driven, data-driven, geographically focused. There's a lot of information in terms of a thorough review on the web if you just want to Google Center for Community Progress and Vacants to Value. A big report by Alan Malik will come up about, sort of an exhaustive look at the program. But I just wanted to, in that, he framed what I thought was the sort of the question and more limited approach of V2V, which was, and I'm going to quote Alan, "No city has enough public funds to get more than a handful of properties rehabbed each year. Recognizing this reality, officials in Baltimore asked, how do we create the conditions that will lead private developers to invest private resources to rehab vacant properties?" And in the end, we managed to leverage, thousands of rehabs, and we sort of developed a deep relationship between the government, neighborhood organizations, foreign nonprofit developers, and a very strong city-state partnership. We started by looking at the unit of measurement as the house, but eventually it evolved into the unit of measurement being the block, right? And we could leverage private dollars into blighted blocks if we could assure whole block outcomes. And I think from there, we evolved into the neighborhood as the unit of measurement. And that's the jumping off point to the new era of neighborhood investment. Let me, I just want to show a couple of quick slides before we jump in. Let's see. And see if I can do this pretty smoothly. I'm going to go quickly. The vacants to value strategies that we're talking about is ultimately a streamlined disposition process. We don't have a land bank in Baltimore, but we engage in land banking. We have thousands of city-owned properties, and the issue was, can we get them out onto the street in a way that the private sector would be comfortable investing in blocks with city-owned properties? And the answer was yes. We were able to streamline that disposition process. I like to say that all business is personal. At the end of the day, there has to be a level of trust. And I think we were good at bringing that to bear. We brought code enforcement to the level where, we could actually deploy a strategy, different strategies in different markets. We could program those strategies into our automated business processes, and we could get to scale. In middle markets, we could move vacant buildings, issue citations, which is an administrative enforcement that allowed us to scale way up what we were previously doing judicially. And then judicially, in these what we call community development clusters, these are areas of very blighted areas with almost whole blocks of vacants, but proximate to some strength. And if we could combine the disposition of city-owned property and our receivership work, which was something we brought to scale, meaning we would go to court when we needed to change title to that vacant to fire the owner. So we could use executive authority where the market was strong enough that a stick would work. But in other places where we had capitalized investors, we went straight to receivership. Now I'm going to jump quickly to that scale of receivership. Again, thousands of properties we're able to do at this scale. And I think it's worth noting that in his review, just in terms of how sort of different it was, the comment was it's arguably the most effective and most widely used such ordinance anywhere in effect in the U.S. And so that really got us to scale. And now I'm in Chrome, so this isn't going to operate the way I wanted to, but this map just gives you a sense that they're the sort of market value analysis of Baltimore. The middle markets are sort of those green, outlined in green. Business systems were programmed to issue citations and then move to receivership. And in the more distressed areas, which are in that sort of a pinkish color, you can see areas that are surrounded by little outlines. These are these community development clusters. So we were getting at scale and getting, excellent results, but many of these, again, are proximate to strength. Some of those strengths coming from government interventions themselves, whether major redevelopment areas or Hope 6 areas. But those government interventions transforming markets created areas, distressed areas around that now had interest for community redevelopment and real market strength. And then these red dots are in distressed areas where sort of demolition was really what communities were looking for to improve the quality of life. So I'm going to just jump over to say, how did that play out in a neighborhood? This is one neighborhood in the city, Greenmount West, and I want to talk about it for a second. It is proximate to a stronger market. There was foreign nonprofit developer interest. And these are how these strategies got applied. So there's 176 vacant buildings in 2008. City dispositions are about 75 properties in one neighborhood. Receiverships, 70 receiverships surgically applied to the vacant and abandoned buildings that were privately owned. So there was no need to do eminent domain at scale. The blending of the sort of redevelopment authority that comes with the ability to dispose property and the regulatory authority that comes with receivership is now really bringing us to scale in a neighborhood. Some demolitions were necessary based on the particular block, and then almost every vacant building was rehabilitated at this time, 2017. There really aren't any left now. At the same time, this and the adjacent neighborhood we were working, we either rehabbed or built more than 600 units of affordable housing. So I wanted to just say that that unit of measurement as a neighborhood became sort of what vacants to value grew into. And we were having some extraordinary successes in terms of dramatically reducing the number of vacants, while at the same time, the number of vacants in the city was either going slightly up on a citywide level or stable. So we're reducing them in these markets. And that sort of begs the next question about, what is the equity component of this work? And I think that, what happened about 2017 is that we had a new mayor, and she determined to sort of create an independent Department of Housing and Community Development. Everything that we had been doing up until that point, we were tethered to the local public housing authority. And that's kind of like a Nantucket sleigh ride being tethered to the whale. It's at the end of the day, it's very difficult to have a unique focus on community development and also run one of the largest public housing authorities in the nation. So the agency was separated, and it was important to develop a community development strategy. So it was clear what this new Department of Housing and Community Development was going to do. It's online. If anyone listening, just go to dhcd.baltimorecity.gov. It's three important components in a citywide strategy: is expand resources and capacity. We kind of mentioned that. I'll touch that in a minute. Promote access and equity, and invest in all neighborhoods. I wanted to spend just 1 second on access and equity because it's very important, and it's critically important in Baltimore. Before I talk a little bit about the invest in all neighborhoods component. So in Baltimore, this is sort of a chance to get community development right. It's no longer just about leveraging private investment. It's about trying to meet the goals of our community leaders for the community that they want to see, that they want to be a part of, when it's revitalized. And so it starts from, in our opinion, understanding and committing to addressing the longstanding race-based barriers and policies that have devastated neighborhoods, concentrated poverty, and created an affordable housing crisis. And this is Richard Rothstein's work is very, very good on drawing that out. But for Baltimore, for getting community development right, it's ensuring community voices are central to shaping neighborhood redevelopment, right? It's not an afterthought, it's part of the beginning, and it's relentlessly iterative. Minimizing the displacement that can occur with rising values, that's critical. Success means what homeowners are looking for is that they will see an increase in their wealth as their housing values, which have been declining, go back up. So it's important to minimize displacement, to invest in those homeowners' homes. That costs money, to help them stay in their homes, at the same time to build affordable housing so that as the values go up, the market rate affordable rentals are not displaced. So supporting existing homeowners, maximizing access to jobs, prioritizing affordable housing, and then building an internal team that's representative of the community that you're serving and has the capacity to succeed and the willingness to be held relentlessly accountable. So I just wanted to mention that it is important. It's really where the legitimacy for the work ultimately comes. And in terms of building from strength, I think if you can see my cursor, this is Greenmount West right here that we were talking about. And these areas are sort of proof of concepts, the 4 neighborhoods that we saw through vacants to value with a dramatic reduction in the number of vacant buildings. And these are, let me see if I can get us back here. And these are sort of the stronger markets in Baltimore. And this investing in all neighborhoods, these are these impact investment areas here. They're proximate to strength, and it makes sense that we can see near-term transformational investment. And so, again, we're going to invest in all neighborhoods, but the return on that investment and the leverage of private dollars may be different based on where any particular neighborhood is in that phase. So the near-term revitalization, where these arrows are pointing to in the strategy, is nearly 30 neighborhoods in Baltimore City, where we believe through this focused approach and bringing a tremendous amount of resources, which we'll close with, we can bring on near-term equitable revitalization. In some of the proximate markets to these distressed areas where we believe near-term revitalization is possible, it's a longer-term approach, but we can be investing now and building nodes of strength that we will build on as we move the market out. And then in the middle markets, which are a large part of Baltimore City, where a large part of our city has their wealth tied up, we need to, and this program supports those middle market homeowners to assure that we can maintain and ultimately increase values, which is a challenge. I just want to finish. I guess the purpose of this slide is just to say the analysis is really at a block level. If this is a block right here that we're going to promote home ownership in, and these are long-term homeowners, this is our Baltimore code map. If you go online, just Google Baltimore code map, one word, all this sort of intricate data will come up that is the data-driven part of this. But how much are we going to have to spend to support these homeowners? How much will we have to spend to put a roof on this vacant right here, which is what this indicates? How much will we have to spend to demo this alley block? Like, we are looking at it on a really granular level so that we can spend the dollars wisely. Where do these dollars come from? I think it's important to say that resources are critical to be successful here. It's, again, if we had a national urban policy, and maybe we will, that prioritizes our cities and gives us all of us the resources that we need to get this right, that will be great. In the meantime, I wanted to note that our state and city partnership, which is Project Core, is Governor Hogan, by the way, a Republican governor, a very strong supporter of Baltimore City, $75 million in new money in his first 4 years, and he's on a path to do that in his second term. And it's to promote blight elimination, it's gap financing, it's demolition, it's about rehab as much as it is about demolition. That's very important that it gets spent consistent with this larger strategy. I wanted to say that we had to be creative. We capitalized the income stream on several of our city-owned garages and created a $50 million fund. And it has been growing through private contributions to create what we call a neighborhood impact investment fund, which is geographically limited. We had to tax our own real estate transactions to create a local excise tax to support an affordable housing trust fund, which we expect to be in the about $20 million a year. And that's to assure affordable housing at 50% and below of AMI, with half of that at 30% of AMI. We set up our own local grant funding to supplement CDBG, we could take greater risks, support emerging organizations in both capital and operating in Baltimore City. And again, we got a Choice Neighborhood Award, which is a critical piece of geography, so important federal support. And I mentioned the neighborhood subcabinet. So those are the components of our strategy in Baltimore City right now. And the new administration coming in supports it. And so we look forward to equitable community development on this scale using many of the tools I just spoke about. Hopefully I kept that to 15 minutes. And let me stop sharing. Okay.
All right, Reginald, you're up next.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. And again, my name is Reginald Scott. I'm from the city of Detroit, Michigan, and I work with the Detroit Land Bank Authority. I am currently the chief financial officer, but I would say now in April, it will be 5 years with the land bank. And in those first 4 years, I operated as the director of disposition. So before we get into this, and when we talk about building an affordable city, I want to give a bit of context to what surrounded or what is surrounding Detroit at the time prior to moving into my presentation. So if we go back about 4 or 5 years, or maybe a few more years than that, in 2014, we had a couple of interesting situations that existed in the city of Detroit. We had, first off, the city was coming out of bankruptcy. The second thing that was unique about the city of Detroit is amongst all of its departments, there was property ownership, residential property, commercial property, a number of different properties that were spread through many departments of the city as a result of downsizing and things of that nature. So in essence, to provide even a bit more context, the city of Detroit, let's say, was built for about 1.7. And right now we've got about, plus or minus 750,000 individuals. So where we have a unique problem in Detroit, unlike other cities, is that we have increased space and a decreasing population. We were experiencing that at the time. So 4 or 5 years ago, you had a land bank that one of the smart things that was done is that there was a goal and a centralized effort to centrally locate all residential and commercial properties. Residential properties being within the land bank. So all departments or all entities that own property, all of those properties were transferred to the land bank. As a result, the land bank had, at that time, maybe an inventory of well over 100,000 properties. We owned basically a third of the city. So, just as I said, I wanted to set up some context for the work that had to be done and the work that was done afterwards. So with an inventory of almost 100,000 residential parcels, structures was about 30 to 40,000, and then maybe 60,000 vacant parcels of land. We had to develop and we had to basically come up with strategies for how to dispose of these properties in a fair and equitable manner, fully transparent, and something that would allow us to operate at a necessary warp speed that we needed to. Because as you all know, if these properties are in public ownership with limited resources to maintain them, the longer they remain in public ownership, not occupied or sold, they move to the demolition pipeline. So the final thing that I will talk about is at that time, we also were granted, this was under the Obama administration at the time, but we were granted federal funds, hardest hit funds for demolition. And the city of Detroit, through the land bank, was the recipient of about $260 million in demolition funds. And the program is coming to the end now. I'm CFO, so I'm wrapping that program up. And we actually spent all 264, about right now, we got about $1 million left. And those demolitions resulted in about 15,000 demolitions in the city of Detroit. This has been a wonderful thing for me because it's allowed for us to sell, because as we demoed, it catapulted and basically was a catalyst for a number of our sales programs. And just as of yesterday with the election, there was a Proposition Neighborhoods that was on the ballot here in the city of Detroit. And that proposition, neighborhoods passed as well. And what that proposition N is for is another $250 million that is going to be allocated toward the remaining structures that need to be demolished and also rehab of properties that are within the land bank inventory. So I wanted to, present that and give that all a bit of context before I quickly move through some of my slides that explain the programs. But that context gives you some background on as to why we actually have and utilize the programs that we do. So I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully everyone is able to see the screen. So the city of Detroit sold 10,000 side lots and one family scooped them up. So the side lot program is a program that I was proud of, I was responsible for. And if you went to this feature that was featured on our local news station, they did an interview with us about how we were able to sell over 10,000 side lots in a less than a 4-year period. So if you're wondering what a side lot is I can show it to you right here. So a side lot is a lot that is located adjacent to an occupied residential structure. And what we had, because we were doing so many demolitions, is that we might have had a neighborhood that had residents who lived on the block, but 2 to 3 homes in that neighborhood or in that particular area, or the homes surrounding it in green, were homes that needed to be demolished. So as we went in to demolish those homes over the last 4 years, these lots became available. And as the lots became available, we looked at a number of different mechanisms for selling those lots. But the overall goal, as kind of stated by the mayor, was we wanted to reward those who stayed. So for those residents who stayed in the city of Detroit and who had to live next to, around, and that blight for all of those years, the side lots were made available to them, and they were made available at a fixed price of $100. And it allowed for individuals, to increase their footprint or basically own property that oftentimes they have been taken care of, since that property had been blighted or vacant. And to this point, as I said, this was just a couple years ago when the first slide showed that we sold 10,000. And as of this day, we have sold more than 15,000 side lots, similar to the number of demolitions that we have. Now, it hasn't been a 1-for-1 because there were many side lots that were in our inventory prior to demolition. But from an overall perspective, this has been one of our programs that we've been able to build upon and actually transfer ownership of properties back to residents who stayed and who have been taking care of the city. And how the eligibility goes in green is it's left, right, front or back. So we assess the location of the home and the location of the side lot. But again, as we're being transparent, we notify everyone that is around that home, like or around that lot, through postcarding, because we want to make this, and the side lot program works on a first come, first served basis. So if there are other homes around that side lot, each of those individuals are eligible and they apply, and it's on a first come, first served basis. Moving right along, what we discovered after running the side lot program for the number of years that we have is we have a number of individuals who maybe purchased a side lot, or there are a number of side lots that are in a neighborhood that just were not purchased. The neighbor may not have wanted it, or the home may be vacant. So just because it is deemed a side lot because it is next to a residential structure did not automatically lead to that lot being purchased. So earlier this year, for the last 6 to 8 months, our team has been working on what other strategies can we implement in order to make or activate so many of the vacant parcels of land that we had, not structures, but vacant parcels of land. So at that time, the board adopted vacant land policy just earlier this year, and it created 2 new programs, which are neighborhood lots and then variants of side lots. So the neighborhood lot is a lot that it could be a side lot, but if it has not sold as a side lot in 6 months, we offered those lots to neighbors that live within 500 feet. Because if you're living in a neighborhood and the home is vacant, or it's a lot that's across the street or something like that, chances are when you engage in your neighborhood and you take care of your neighborhood, oftentimes you've been the one who's been taking care of that property or taking care of those lots. So we wanted to make those, as you can see in the diagram, maybe across the street or 2 doors down, we wanted to make those lots available to those neighbors who are interested. And those lots are $250. And then we also have the variance to the side lot, and that policy allows for us to sell side lots with garages or accessory structures. And then oversized lots, I should say, or homestead lots, because we had a number of lots that did not fall into the bucket of a side lot, but they were best described as an accessory, oversized, or homestead lot. So we made this program available to sell those lots as well. Again, this is all strategy. We know that, like I said, we have over 60,000 parcels of land, and many of those land parcels are not contiguous, or they are not ripe for some form of development. So, or a larger development or large scale development. So we figured those ways are going to activate a lot more of those lots. While we still have maybe 30 to 40,000 vacant lots that are in our inventory, those are going to be a part of our city's overall master plan. So we follow and we work in conjunction and at the direction of the city of Detroit. So we know that there's still a lot of vacant lots that are in our inventory, but we know that by activating these through these programs that we just mentioned, it is going to allow for us to sell more lots and actually have our constituents and our city of Detroit residents happier about what's going on with the land. The other component that I want to speak about briefly is we've got home sales programs. So the bread and butter of our operations, just from a financial standpoint, is our home sales. So we have two major programs that we run that are running right now, and that's our auction and our Own It Now program. And I referenced earlier our goal and our desire to be very transparent in our processes. So each one of the programs, the home sales programs, are programs that are on our website, buildingdetroit.org. And on our website, you can go register. So everything is done online. So you can register, you can review, you can put your bid in for the home all online. It allows for us to say that we do not have a hand in any of the selections. It is, your traditional auction from 9 to 5 every day. And the homes begin auctioning, you begin the auction at 9, and by 5 o'clock, whoever the highest bidder is that winner. We then check eligibility, and that person is able to purchase that home. Our auction program is now, as we are moving through our residential inventory that we can actually renovate and sell and is not ready for demolition. Our auction has been going for several years now, but we auction typically 2 properties a day. About a 75 to 80% success ratio with those on a regular basis. And what we learned maybe in 2017 is that we had to have other ways of selling some of our other properties that were not auction ready, or properties that we could not afford the revenue necessary to do auction prep on those. And that's when we came with our Own It Now program. So basically it's very similar to like a Buy It Now. You put in your basically it's a sealed bid offer. So you put in your highest and best offer. And after a 3-day period, if your offer remains the highest and best, you're deemed the winner. And then we go through again eligibility to make sure that you can meet the requirements to purchase the home. And then the home is yours. So we sell these programs, but the side lot program and the lot program works collectively with our structure program, because what we are trying to do is eliminate the vacancy and the blight in those neighborhoods. And by attacking it from a lot standpoint, as well as the structure standpoint, we've been pretty successful. So between these two programs, we have sold over 9,041 structures. And between that and this side lots, it's still a daunting task, but we have reduced our inventory overall over the last 4 years from plus 100,000 to right around 80,000, less than 80,000. And we're continuing to do that. Thankfully, through the Proposition N proposal that passed, we will be able to demolish more homes, but also get renovation to some of those homes and continue to sell through these auction and Own It Now programs, the same ways that we've done in the past. I wanted to, when I'm here, I also wanted to point out, because this was something that was a discussion point for building affordable cities. One benefit that is in the auction program is with auction properties, we actually offer a 50% discount to City of Detroit employees and City of Detroit educators. We also offer it to but we recently implemented that for our trade and union, trades workers, skilled laborers. And the thought behind that is, as we talk about building an affordable city, those individuals who work in the city, we would like for them to be able to work and live in the same place, or live where they work and work where they live. If you looked at my bio prior to joining the land bank, I spent a lot of time in as CFO and management of schools. So we've learned in the city of Detroit that so as a neighborhood goes, sometimes so goes the schools. That if there is a lot of blight in the neighborhood, the expectations or the population in that school tends to decrease. People want to go to different schools in different neighborhoods that have more resources and things like that. So why we wanted to offer to educators, because we know with Detroit public school systems and many of the good things that they've been doing, they've been recruiting a lot of individuals. So with the auction program, it is not always as cost prohibitive. And with a 50% discount, it allows for that individual to potentially invest in the property, buy the property and get it under market value and still be able to invest in its renovation and experience, the benefits of that discount. So it's a great program that we've seen huge success in. Very interestingly, I just did first quarter review of our financials, and already this year, you would think it might not be the same, but even during these COVID times, we have authorized or issued over $500,000 in discounts for this, for auction properties through the City of Detroit discount program or the educators or the trade union. So just one of the things I wanted to point out. Finally, we have project sales, because there are certain properties that we do not list on our Auction and Own It Now website. Auction and Own It Now is open to everyone. It's open to the public. We have this mantra of very few or low barriers to entry. So we make sure that everyone who is interested, if they have the money, they can buy those homes. But oftentimes we run into situations where there are certain potential properties or land that we want to send through a project, and it's reviewed because the cost for rehab or repair or building on that is not anything that you can do blindly. You want to make sure that the individuals have basically some experience and the financial resources to be able to support what they've set out to do. So the Auction and Own It Now programs are designed for those homes that we know you can invest in, and those homes that we know that can be brought into occupancy with your typical resident or city of Detroit, or maybe even an employee who is just working and they're doing it paycheck to paycheck, but they're fixing the house up slowly but surely. And that's what we primarily use our Auction and Own It Now program for. But projects is a project team where we market projects or we market properties through real estate agents, and we look for a development plan, some experience, and the financial resources to make sure that you can handle the task. But we also just look at project programs, people that apply for structures or lots that may not be offered through Auction or Own It Now for gardens or other developments and things like that. And then finally, our community partners is where we work with nonprofit or faith-based organizations in a particular neighborhood to have access to multiple units at the same time, just so that they can impact their neighborhood that they're operating in a more effective manner. And that ends my overview of some of the programs that are offered by the Detroit Land Bank Authority. And I will wait for questions at the end. And now I will turn it back over to our host.
Thanks, Reginald. John, you are up next, so we'll let you jump in.
You got it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the speakers who went first. Those gave me a lot to think about. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see my screen, Anna?
Nope, not yet.
How's that?
There we go. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, thank you everybody for being here, for the opportunity to talk with you, and thank you to ULI Memphis for organizing this. My name is John Shepard. I work for Elmington Capital. We are a private developer based in Tennessee. We do a fair amount of work in the city of Memphis. Let's see. We've been in Memphis since close to when we were founded in 2009. We have 70 employees there currently. We've invested about $150 million in the city overall, across maybe 10 or so different developments. We are a developer, a property manager, a construction company, and like I said, an aggregator of private capital as well. In addition to Memphis, we are in about 12 states. Anna, is that the graph that, or the photo that you can see on the screen? The map?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Just making sure. I'm got a couple screens going here and trying to figure out what I'm doing. But we're as you can see, we're across the Southeast. Basically, our development footprint is a little narrower than that. We're primarily developing Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas, and Alabama. But we're in all of Tennessee's major metro areas in addition to Memphis. So we do have a decent perspective on markets outside of Memphis. And I guess, one thing that I would say is, I want to share perspectives and lessons learned, but ultimately Memphis is doing a lot of things right. And from my standpoint as a private investor and developer, that's being flexible, that's partnering with developers like us, and leveraging the private capital that we can bring, and then meeting the market where it is, which I think is something that Michael said in his, the opening talk. As a community, there's a nexus between where the market is and whatever your community development objectives are. And so identifying that nexus is key. And I think Memphis has really been successful in doing that. So we kind of specialize in what I would call workforce or affordable or mixed income housing. And I know that those are not the same concepts, but in that sort of spectrum is where we specialize. So I think of that, in a city like Memphis, that's kind of folks making, households making between, call it $22,000 a year and $47,000 a year, sort of in that range. I'll just show you a couple images and things that we've built both in Memphis and outside of Memphis. This is a development in South Main that we delivered 5 or 6 years ago. This is a mixed use development in Nashville that we delivered in the last couple of years. It's got a mix of affordable residential development on the top. There's retail on the ground floor and some office and co-working space integrated in there as well. This is a development that we delivered in Nashville. It's this is actually a senior focused affordable development. And so it's got a large clubhouse area for the residents to congregate and utilize for programming. This is a development in Uptown Memphis that we built in the last few years. 3-story residential affordable development called Uptown Flats. Kind of a similar development in Memphis or in Nashville that's under construction right now. And then Berkeley, Maine. This is a development that's under construction in Memphis in Uptown at the corner of Berkeley, Maine, kind of where Chelsea comes in there and makes that hard left turn onto, I guess that's Second. So, I just want to talk about what we view as a successful formula for affordable housing development that we've seen in Memphis and to a certain extent in Memphis, and then also in other markets. And it's not the only formula, but it's one that we found that is successful for a lot of communities. And it kind of comes down to 3 things, which are sites, development sites, property taxes, and then gap financing. And we'll talk about each one of those things. On sites, it's all about site availability, and there's a couple things that go into that, but far and away the biggest one is zoning, and flexible zoning, development friendly zoning, where you can have some level of density, modern parking requirements are important. Recognizing the fact that a lot of people are using modes of transportation now that are not necessarily automobiles. You have a lot fewer two-car households than you did 20 years ago, and Memphis has I think been really successful in that with Memphis 3.0. Several of the other major cities in Tennessee have also adopted similar overhauls in their zoning, especially in the urban core. Knoxville with Recode that was just approved recently, which is it's focused on the things that I mentioned as far as density and urban parking ratios, but also just a larger emphasis on mixed use development and creating integrated dynamic communities. And then Chattanooga as well with the form-based code, which was adopted in, I think, 2016. And that is primarily concentrated in the downtown Chattanooga area, but has really sparked a lot of redevelopment activity in that area because of the flexibility and the growth that it encourages. So that's one important key. I think Memphis is doing great there with the adoption of Memphis 3.0. Another big issue is property taxes, and the way that affects affordable housing specifically is very state by state. And in Tennessee, affordable housing is actually taxed at a higher rate than market rate housing, if you can believe that. And the reason is because a court case, Spring Hill versus Tennessee Board of Equalization, assessors in Tennessee can include the value of any tax credits that were generated in the development of the property when they assess the value of the real estate. So they're assessing, they have the ability to assess not just the real estate itself, but the tax credits that went into that. The only issue with that is the tax credits have been monetized and are basically out of the picture from the standpoint of income being produced from the property to pay for those taxes. So what that looks like in the real world is you could have two identical developments next door to each other. One of them's affordable and one of them's not, or one of them has affordability restrictions on it. One of them is just market rate. And the one with the affordability restrictions on it is actually going to pay potentially more property taxes than the one that doesn't have any income restrictions on it. So what that has done is it makes affordable housing development extremely difficult because of the property tax burden on affordable housing. And in response, basically every major municipality in the state of Tennessee has come up with some sort of pilot program or sometimes multiple pilot programs. And pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. And it's basically kind of a negotiated approach, typically run by either the housing authority or the health and ed board or an entity like that, where that sort of takes into account the affordability restrictions on a piece of property when determining property tax payments. And allows for a reduction in those property tax payments in exchange for maintaining the affordability of the property. And that's absolutely key. And Memphis has a good program in place. There are a lot of wrinkles and probably outside the scope of this conversation, but obviously maintaining those programs, expanding on them where they exist is really important for the creation of affordable housing. And then the last kind of piece of the formula I mentioned is gap financing. And yeah, I outline here 3 different gap financing programs in some of Memphis's peer cities or other major cities in Tennessee, in Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Nashville. And these are all kind of local trust funds, dedicated sources of funding that have been created by these municipalities to provide gap financing for affordable housing. And Memphis is doing definitely some of this, primarily through home funds that it has available. But there's definitely room to do more. And, it's not, I'll say this, it's not the most sexy solution to talk about on a ULI panel. There's definitely, people like definitely creative solutions and innovative solutions. And we do too, absolutely. But to a certain extent, some of the stuff comes down to, I was on the listening to Andre Perry at the Housing Summit last week, hosted by the city and by Neighborhood Preservation, and he used a phrase like "cut the check," and how important just the kind of inescapable the value of actual cash is, and how irreplaceable that is. And gap financing is sort of cut the check, and it is really important. I will say it doesn't have to be a huge check, and there's ways to kind of further mitigate the impact of that on already strained municipal budgets. You can structure these things in the form of loans and do things like that. But it is important because affordable housing, it costs the same amount to build as market rate or luxury housing. And it actually costs more to manage because there's a compliance burden with managing affordability restrictions and ensuring that the residents who live there comply with those. So it costs as much to build, it costs more to manage, but the income that you're generating is far less because of the restrictions, the affordability restrictions. So that's all to say that affordable housing is very susceptible to leverage, or it can't withstand financial leverage in the same way that market rate developments can. So this kind of gap financing is really key for that. And it's key, I would say, also for getting affordable development where you want it. So this is a map of Knoxville, and I'm not picking on Knoxville, but this could be a map of pretty much any city. The purple areas are called qualified census tracts, which probably a lot of people on this call are familiar with, but they're basically identified by virtue of income data published by the government. And it's not always indicative of lower income or economically distressed areas, but it is often more associated with those kinds of areas. And as you can, so here, that's those purple areas, those are qualified census tracts. And then the little house icons are affordable housing developments. And so what you can see is the vast majority of these affordable housing developments are located within these qualified census tracts. So, and there's a reason for that, and it has to do with the way that affordable housing gets financed. But that the point of that is to say that, in addition to the sort of susceptibility to leverage that affordable housing has, the costs associated with it, if you want to deliver it in high opportunity areas in your city, it's important that you provide the resources for developers to be able to do that. And you can see, how hard it is to do that when there's not historically like a large amount of those resources available. So, but Knoxville has recently enacted a local housing trust fund, like I mentioned, in an effort to combat some of these forces. And we have accessed it, a development called Moss Grove. It's under development right now. It's in a very high opportunity area of the city. It's located in a phenomenal school district. close to a lot of jobs, great retail and services, in an area where there's really virtually no affordable housing historically been built. And it's a $45 million development that the housing trust funds have incentivized to the tune of $950,000, which is definitely a significant amount of money. Don't get me wrong, but the leverage on that is really tremendous, and I think from anybody's perspective is a great return on that investment. And that doesn't even get into start factoring those kind of knock-on collateral benefits like jobs and sales tax and economic growth that's associated with it. So, that's, like I said, that's not the only formula, but those are kind of three really important keys that we've seen in the cities that we work in. Memphis is doing all of them to a certain extent. I'm just trying to provide some context to sort of situate Memphis's efforts in some of these other peer cities and provide examples of where those efforts can be strengthened. So I appreciate the opportunity to share that, and I look forward to the conversation.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Reginald. Roshan, did you have any questions or any ideas that jumped off the page? As is typical, I took like 50 pages of notes and wrote down a bunch of questions, but since I kicked it off last time, I'll defer to you.
Okay, I was also taking notes, Scott. First, I'd like to thank all of our presenters and say how envious I am of both Michael, who I knew about your work in Baltimore, and Reginald in Detroit, with things like the $20 million Affordable Housing Trust Fund in Baltimore for families that are 50% and below AMI, and for Reginald with the proposition neighborhoods. That just blew me away with the $250 million. And I was just asking questions of myself. Really, this is for you, Michael, around, you mentioned the neighborhood cabinet, where there's a cross-agency partnership to get the community development outcomes that we all want to see. Were there a lot of challenges to setting that up? Because I know sometimes agencies in government can be siloed, and there could be a lot of obstacles to doing that type of work.
Yeah, Roshan, I think the short answer is yes. I think I mentioned nothing is easy. Yes, there were obstacles, in terms of, each agency head is, often in a silo and sees their, anyone who's ever had these jobs, you're constantly harried. So the idea that you had to devote time to something that wasn't necessarily what you considered your portfolio. It's not community development. It's maintaining parks. It's not community development. It's paving roads. It's not community development. It's policing. And so this requires a strong push from the administration that community development be a focus of the administration. And it's not a question of the housing commissioner asking you. It's the mayor asking you, and more or less the mayor telling you that in order for us to get the outcomes that our community leaders want, we're going to have to work together. So it was a challenge, but and nothing starts where you want to finish it. But I think one of the things that gave it a lot of life was that community leaders were present, and their electeds were present. And so they wanted to see make sure that their issues stayed on track, and so that helped give it a bit of its own drive, keeping the administration even on path, because other electeds statewide and council were present along with community leadership.
And you kept saying proximate to strength, and that was very important to me, because I painted a picture in my head. There's this artist, I can't even think of the artist, but it's a picture that says, "He's not heavy, he's my brother." It may be Ernie Barnes, I'm not sure. But that is the image that came to my head, because we're surrounded by distressed and low wealth neighborhoods, and if we're next door, and particularly in Memphis, and it's probably true in Baltimore, we may be one street over from a neighborhood that is thriving, and we rise by lifting up. And so I just wanted to make a note of that. And I don't mean to take over, Scott, but I'm going to go through real quickly so we can get to any questions. Reginald, just a little bit more about proposition neighborhoods. I was taking notes and I missed some of what actually happened with the vote.
Okay, so as of this morning, well, Michigan was still counting, but we did get the confirmation that the Proposition N is going to pass. So it was on the ballot, and it did pass, and the voters decided that they want the city to move forward. So I think it's going to be a $250 million bond. So there are a lot of steps in getting the funding, but I just think that it is. It's a great opportunity for us to continue all of the progress that we've made. So I'm very supportive of it. I know from just what I've seen and what we've seen at the land bank, if you demolish in a certain area, while at the same time selling in that area and making accessible vacant land and other structures, they become activated. And just like from a numbers perspective, when I first started with the land bank in 2016, if we closed on 50 properties in a month, we were doing we were doing great work. So since that time, we've gone from the needle continued to move. So after we started closing 50 a month, the goal was if you guys could get to 75, and we got to 75, and then we got to 100. So then about a year and a half ago, the mayor was like, well, you guys got to, if you can get to 200 a month, we can really make a dent in this. And we started listing more properties, activating more properties, and we were closing 200 a month. Well, strangely enough, with COVID going on, we thought our sales numbers were going to go down. But in the last couple of months, it's unbelievable. We have closed on, this last month, we closed on 504 properties. And the previous month, we closed on 400 plus properties. So it's a demonstration that as blight is removed and there's activation in neighborhoods, people are beginning to buy structures and they're buying homes. One other thing that I don't know that it is unique to Detroit. I love having these type of conversations where we hear what's going on in other cities. Individuals, like when they were talking a lot about the Proposition N, they said that the trends in Detroit, as far as our sales and land bank sales, are inconsistent with the real estate market because the values are going down in the set. But I think what's important for a place like Detroit, or people to understand about a place like Detroit, most of the individuals who are buying the homes from the land bank or something like that are not buying to fix them up and sell them, but oftentimes they're buying and fixing it up because that's the residential home that they want to own, and they want to have ownership and they want to remain in that neighborhood. But the great thing about the land bank is it's an opportunity for both. So I'll shut up because I enjoy what I do, so I can continue talking on and on about this. So, but yes, so that's what Prop N is about. Sorry.
I see three questions from Charlie, Beth, and Steve, but I'll wait to after Scott talks. I wanted to get to John, my homeboy. He talked about sites, property taxes, and gap financing. And I'd like to applaud Elmington because when I first saw you guys come to Memphis, I was actually on the Health Educational Housing Facilities Board, and we administered the pilot program for affordable housing. And we walked into your properties, and I said, I like these guys because of the finishes that they put in affordable housing. They're after my own heart because I believe in building places where I can live with my daughter, and that's what you all have done in your developments. Thank you for that in Memphis. You brought up something pretty controversial for me, this property tax issue in Tennessee and the Spring Hill case, which is notorious for anybody in the affordable housing world. And I don't know, and I'm about to be even more controversial. Our local assessor has recently brought a suit against the Shelby County Board of Equalization, along with 7 pages of property owners, which includes at least me. And I think you may have been on that page too. Elmington Capital, I know one of our affordable housing developments is brought up in that lawsuit, which is interesting because we extended the land use restrictive agreement on that, extending affordability for the next 20 years for families who are 60% and below the median. And so you can answer yes or no. And then you mentioned qualified census tracts and how our QAP in Tennessee is written up, where we're going after our 9% credits. And I always say, forcing us into the qualified census tracts and not other high opportunity areas is our way of continuing to be NIMBYous. And I don't know if you want to respond to either the lawsuit or my belief that we are continuing. It allows us to be NIMBYous in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Roshan. I'm not up to speed on the lawsuit, so I won't comment on that specifically. But as it pertains to pilots and property taxation, I mean, the burden is huge. I mean, so we own an affordable deal here in Nashville that doesn't have a pilot on it, and we pay the first 4 months of the year. All of our income goes to paying our property taxes. So before we pay our electric bill, before we pay our property managers, before we pay our insurance, any of that stuff, we're a third of the way through the year and we've just paid our property taxes. So obviously you can't, that development was built a long time ago. We bought it, but you can't develop new affordable housing when that's the level of property tax burden you have. I will say, this is kind of not a developer typical statement in this area, but the silver lining, I think, is behind around this issue and the need for pilots is that it does give a lot more local control over the development of affordable housing, where as opposed to some jurisdictions where you have just like a blanket property tax exemption for affordable housing, which exists in a number of states. Here, you have to go through a local process to obtain the pilot. And so that gives whoever that local entity is the authority to say, this is a great project. We want to make it happen, or, no, this doesn't really fit with our community goals. So again, that's not really in a developer's interest to sort of highlight that, but I do think that from a community standpoint, that is a silver lining in the way that property taxes are treated in affordable housing in Tennessee. As far as the qualified census tract issue, it does have a lot of negative impacts in terms of concentrating affordable housing. There are things that THGA, the State Housing Finance Agency, and other entities are doing to try to combat that. But if you just historically look at where affordable housing is, it tends to be concentrated in qualified census tracts. The thing that I think is interesting is the way that qualified census tracts are becoming less and less proxy for low opportunity areas. I mean, I said that there have always been exceptions, but the exceptions are becoming greater and greater, much more so than they used to be. Like, for instance, much of South Main and Memphis is in a qualified census tract. Well, South Main is a fantastic area, the strongest economic areas of the city. And it has to do with kind of weird math and like the way that those census tracts are identified. But it's just important to keep in mind that while that impact is real, it's becoming a little more muddled just by virtue of market trends around urban redevelopment that we're seeing in places like Memphis and Nashville and everywhere else.
Scott, I don't want to take over because we have some very interesting questions. Some of them are coming to me privately.
Okay, I only see one question on the public chat. So do you want me to, well, I just had really kind of one probably typical developer statement, but John, I liked, what you said about just cut the check. I mean, a lot of us want to do the right thing, and a lot of us, see opportunity, and the financial aspect of it really ultimately becomes our ability to execute it or not. And just, if it's the right project, the right area, if it fits the criteria, just cut the check. Let's set up funds that help kind of propel these sorts of developments in our city. And I do think that I think that there are glimpses of that happening on these kind of pseudo governmental agencies and things like that. But I think we need more of it, here in Memphis. But I'm going to jump to Charlie's question that I see up on the chat. And this is for Reginald, the Own It Now program. Does it attract a lot of investors who create rental homes? And if so, what are the constraints on rental rates, et cetera?
Our Own It Now program, we do not preclude, so it does attract occupants as well as investors. And again, our requirement is to get it fixed up and to get it occupied. And once the individual gets it fixed up and occupied, we release our interest in the property. I think when it comes to rental rates, I know that what the city of Detroit is doing, because we still have a significant amount of the population of the city of Detroit who are renters. The city has implemented from an enforcement standpoint, a registry and certain landlords have to go through this entire registry and make sure that they check all of the boxes as it relates to their property, the health, safety, the condition of their property. Thus, that will, again, align with the rental rate that's applied. And if that individual does not go through that process, they are listed as like a non-approved, unapproved landlord or something like that. I hope that answers the question. I think if we're talking about rental rates, from an investor standpoint, I think we've seen that it has been pretty attractive because the acquisition cost may be low. And if an investor has a number of properties, the economies of scale on rehab may be significantly lower. And a rehabbed home in certain neighborhoods is going to attract a potential renter. So the market for that has been good. We don't preclude. We just want to make sure that we get it occupied and get it renovated and back on the tap.
Okay. The next three questions that I received privately are also for you, Reginald. There are the properties that you're selling in the land bank. Are they insurable? Do they have clear and insurable title once you're selling them, or are people required to do a quiet title action? And then the next second question, it's related to the insurance on those properties from Steve. That's from Beth and Steve. And the third from Michael. It talks about, he's asking about how your bond will be repaid over time. The Proposition Neighborhoods, $250 million.
Okay, so
can I just jump in if I can to ask Reginald when he gets to that? I just wanted to say how exciting that is, and when you get to that one, I wanted to jump in and make a point.
Sure. So the first thing with our property and the insurable title question, thank you for that question because it's a great question, and it's one that I should have spoke about when I talk about the land bank as a whole. If you take nothing away from this presentation, the great thing about the land bank is, and when I tell people about buying property from the land bank, it is the fact that we offer insurable title. And so to answer your question directly, the individual that buys from the land bank, they can be assured that the property, if necessary, has gone through a quiet title action and all liens or encumbrances have been removed. Mm-hmm. That is one of the greatest benefits of the land bank, and that's why the administration found the necessity or the recommended to activate the land bank is because of our far-reaching quiet title abilities. And we can clear up issues or clear title on a number of different issues. We have an entire quiet title team. We activate, if we sell at 70%, we basically may run quiet title actions on about 3,000 to 4,000 properties each year. All of the properties that are in our inventory do not require quiet title. It does not, but we do remove all liens. And so at the end of the day, when you buy a property from the land bank, you can be assured that it has clear and marketable title. and that's, for all of you that know, that is critical. What it does allow, it allows for individuals to get financing. And with that marketable title, people are very happy with that. When we first started in this, and for those that may have some historical perspective to the land bank, when we began selling properties, we generated so little revenue that we did not have a full quiet title team, and we could not afford quiet title on every property. But as revenue began to generate in 2017 with this position, I recognized that we had such a bottleneck in selling properties. So what we did is we just figured it out in the budget, and we had the quiet title team, and we made sure that every property that we sold, QT had been done if necessary. So that has been something that has changed as an improvement as we generated more revenue. And since that time, we have been able to, increase sales, and that's a good selling point for the land bank. As far as our bonds are concerned, again, the bond issuance, just as background, the Land Bank Authority, we are an authority that is funded by the city of Detroit. We have about a $26 million budget. About 50% of that is funded through City of Detroit funds. However, all of the structures that are in the land bank's inventory, our own were previously owned as property of the city. So the land bank will be a part of this bond issuance, of course, because it's going to be the land bank property that's either demolished or renovated. However, the bond issuance the bond is issued to the City of Detroit. So the repayment, I believe, is over a 30-year period. But again, this is just, kind of like hot off the presses. It just happened the other day. So I would resort to the Office of the Chief Financial Officer on how the City of Detroit is going to proceed with the bond issues. I know our investment grade rating has improved. And I also know that the cash position of the City of Detroit is much stronger than it was in previous years. And, lack of better terms, the money is probably cheap right now. So the city is able to borrow at this time. So I believe it's a good thing for the city. Hopefully I answered that question, but I would, as I learn more about our bond issuance and who we're going to use, and, the investment grade rating and the review, I'll continue to share with this team, because it's going to be a unique experience. I did a bond issuance for charter schools. It was, 10% of that amount. So it's very interesting to see how this is all going to play out. So.
Yeah, Rashawn, if you permit me, I just wanted to say that, I think the important point, is how creative Detroit is being, because, investing in the future, instead of thinking about it as spending money, it costs money. And so a $250 million sort of general obligation bond, because stabilizing houses costs money, demolishing houses costs money, but the return to the city over time is going to be, is what you're investing in. Same with the way John brought up affordable housing. If folks at 30% of AMI could afford to compete in the market for housing, they wouldn't need gap financing. Mm-hmm. But the point is, affordable housing costs money. So this kind of creative investment in the future that Detroit is doing at such a scale is really, really something to marvel at, and they deserve a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I'm a native Detroiter, and I'll just say this. The interesting thing about what's happening here is like kind of when you talk to your friends or high school classmates, is we start our auctions on our properties at $1,000. So literally, you could buy an auction home for $1,000. You may have to invest 25 to 30 in it to get it renovated and occupied, but you have ownership, and you have ownership of that home. It's renovated, it's occupied in a particular neighborhood that they will see, and you will see that there is a focused effort on investment. Well, commercial thoroughfares, walkable neighborhoods, all of those things. So the upside is that, with minimal investment, as you see, it continues, your value can continue to rise. But if the value, if it stays the same, you still are owning a property, kind of, if you were able to do it that way, free and clear, in a city where a market is being built around you. Because where we are now is our properties are not in the most, popular neighborhoods. So as we're doing this, we are revitalizing and building some neighborhoods. And there are many people in Detroit who, are committed to a neighborhood, and they bought there, they lived there all of their life, and they want to see this type of investment back in the city. So it's going to be good, I believe, for a number of years to come. So thanks for those questions.
Yeah, there's a question related from who issues your bonds, and I know it's probably your local government.
Yes, local government. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the city of Detroit will be issued.
And Reginald, also, could you speak to how their tax revenue has changed from the side lot program? That's from Seth.
You know, our tax, so how our taxes, I guess how the land bank funds itself is we have what's called a 550 agreement with the city of Detroit. And for all land bank properties that are sold, for 5 years, 50% of that tax revenue goes to the land bank to support the land bank's operations. So our tax revenue, and I mean, you know, I can say this, is that the city sometimes says to us, it's not processed as fast as we would like it to be. But of course, since they're funding us, there's no urgency to continue because it is not going to reach, the tax revenue has not reached the levels by which we would be self-supporting. But that would be the overall goal. But tax revenue has significantly impacted the city from land bank sales. We have another presentation that we do that we provide to city council, but I don't like to throw out the accounting. I don't like to throw out wrong numbers by not having it, but I can make sure that I share or provide the information of like our tax impact. But right now, from the revenue that we receive from that 550 revenue, last year it increased by about 35%, and we received for the first time over $900,000 in tax revenue. And that doesn't account for every property sold, but as the Register of Deeds records a property, recognizes it, because it's got to be on an independent or a different tax roll when you get that 550 disbursement. So it's a number of different things that causes a bit of a delay. But like I said, we had over $900,000 in tax revenue from the prior year.
I'm sorry, Scott. It's another private, and this is local for you, John. The impression is that Elmington may consider profit over people. And the question is there a sweet spot for developers and their ability to provide affordable housing? I tried to answer it, John, but you're going to have to answer it. I said something like, you probably are getting your rate of return by playing several roles as developer, management, and contractor, but please try to address that perception that Elmington is looking at profit over people.
Yeah, sure. So we're a private for-profit investment entity, and we don't try to hide that or claim to be anything that we aren't. We do partner often with not-for-profit developers. We profit with local government entities, community development organizations. So we think there's a role for all of those types of organizations. And we try to stay in our lane, as it were. And that means there are some projects that don't work for us. I mentioned kind of the range of types of household incomes that we tend to see in developments that we build. Obviously, there's a lot of people who fall outside of that, above or below. And so we're not a one size fits all solution. Having a comprehensive housing strategy as a city and community development strategy, you need a lot of other types of organizations and actors. So we're just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I agree. And just to take that further, we're probably the other end of that development spectrum, where we're serving families that are 60% and below. We know that, but there is no rate of return. We're operating on negative money. And we can expect that private developers can continue to operate that way. And we're dependent on a lot of philanthropic sources as a result.
Well, we've sort of reached the end of our time here. This has been a fantastic conversation. I know that I myself have learned a lot and took several pages of notes myself and that sort of thing. So I just want to again say thank you to John and Michael and Reginald for being a part of this program with us and sharing the great things that they are doing in their communities and seeing in other places, and being willing to share all of that with us. And then a shout out also again to Reginald and Scott, who have been our consistent moderators through all 4 of this series. And then just want to make a final plug for, I hope all of you who are on the call today will choose to join us again next Thursday, same time, 8:30 to 10. I believe the registration link was at the beginning of the chat if you are interested. And Roshan and Scott will be joining us again, as well as 4 young leaders from our community, Brent Hooks, Joyce Selena Love, Mariko Kraus, and Safari Love, who will be sharing sort of their perspectives on the programs that they've heard, and as they are moving into or deepening their reach into the Memphis community and the real estate industry, sort of their thoughts on all of this and lessons they've learned and things that they hope that, that we can affect change with here in our community. So with that, I will close out today's session. Thank you all again. Appreciate you all so much. Thanks. Everybody have a great week.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.